Development Initiatives Oversight Committee. I'm Dr. Stephen Holt, and I have the privilege of facilitating our meeting tonight. And just a couple of housekeeping items so that you know where items are for those who are unfamiliar with the property. Down the stairs, out the door, down the stairs is the men's restroom. I don't know why this is, I have no idea why I've got the in and out dynamic going on. Also, tonight's meeting is recorded, audio and visual, so that in case you have any concerns about being captured by the camera or anything like that, at least you're aware that the meeting is being recorded. Does it sound like this to you, or is it just me, like it's going in and out, in and out? Okay, all right. I thought we were having a moment. Maybe I was having a moment. Welcome again. I'm glad you're here. We've got a lot to do tonight. For those who are on the committee, the mics are now under your control. And so the button in front of you that is red means that your voice is not being heard at the moment. When it is your time to speak, if you will touch it, turn it green, and then share what you need to say, and then touch it again to turn it red. And our process is when you have something to lead in or to articulate when we're talking about a topic, we ask everybody to turn their name card on in. That way I make sure you get captured and we don't overspeak one another. I'd like to recognize Bobby Lee, the Economic Development Director. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your presence tonight. And then we've got a couple of new additions to the committee, and we'll give them an opportunity at some point as the chairs recognize them. You will hear from them. So, hopefully you've gotten an agenda from right out front that articulates what we're covering tonight. There are a couple of spaces for public comment, and it gives you an overview of how we are going to do what we do this evening. Welcome, everybody. And now, Haben, I will put it into your hands.
Hi, welcome everyone. It's nice to see a lot of us here today. And we want to welcome 2 new members to our committee. We're super excited. The process was very, we had a lot of applicants, and I think we went through a really great process to pick 2 individuals that I think are going to help us even further with all the committee work that we're doing. So with that, I want to introduce our 2 new members, Samuel Herschel Riggins, and yeah, right there. And I'll give you guys a chance to say hey right when I'm done. And then Gwen Thompson from Concordia University right there. And if you guys want to just say hi to the committee and maybe share why you're excited to join our committee. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Herschel Riggins, and I joined the committee because I was interested in the process and the neighborhood. I'm a lifelong member here in the area, over 47, 48 years in the area. I actually live right across the street for 5 of them. So.
Okay. Welcome.
Hi everyone, my name is Gwen Thompson. I am an adjunct professor at Concordia University. I am also a resident of the Albina community. I've owned a business here, and I also am a contributor at various boards. So I'm super excited to participate here, and I'm looking forward to meeting everyone. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
We'll keep rolling right along. We are now at item number 3. And Alicia Posey, if you would go over our minutes.
So I just want everybody to take a moment to read through the meeting minutes from last meeting in February. And then afterwards, we will just quickly ask if there's questions or any edits that you see that need to be made. So let me give you about 2-3 minutes to read over those. All right, are there any questions or edits that you would like to make to the meeting minutes? Perfect, then we will move forward with accepting these minutes. I'm not going to ask for a vote because we're going to move away from motions and procedures such as those for approving these minutes and other actions. And we'll talk about that a little bit more further down in the agenda.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So item number 4, old business and report outs. We're going to talk first about the impact study and then facilitation training, and we will go directly in that manner. Mr. Roming.
We had a subcommittee meeting that studied the impact study, same stuff that we had talked about prior, and what we looked at is putting out a request for qualifications to have someone do that study. Some of the basis of the study which we've talked about is number of businesses owned by minorities, the size of those businesses, their location, some of the history and some of the trends that we see with housing, whether or not minorities are home ownership and rentals. So we started to look at some of those. So there is a document that will probably be circulated amongst this board to take a look at, to then go ahead and go out to, if there's something missing there. We felt like this subcommittee did a good job. I think we met for about 2 hours, and any subcommittee members want to chime in, feel free. But we met for about 2 hours just going over where we feel like we should be tracking. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions for anyone that wasn't in that committee, as far as things that you might feel like we should be talking about or the process. Now I'll lean on my subcommittee members to also chime in at any time. I thought it was a good meeting.
Yeah. So I will clarify, and Kimberly, you can correct me if I'm incorrect, but we were meeting not as a subcommittee, but just a group of two members who were previously discussing this. So I just want to clarify that distinction, if I'm correct.
That is correct. It was brought up whether or not we should have a subcommittee, but we decided not to.
No, but it was a great meeting. Maybe you can talk to the next steps.
Sure. It was a great meeting. Dr. Bates, Lisa Bates joined us and provided some great insight about how we can move forward and some of the components that we should look at as we move forward to kind of determine the impact of large-scale and development, and also the impact that the North-Northeast Community Development Initiative implementation will have on the redevelopment of North-Northeast. And so we're looking at a broader scope than we had originally talked about. And so the next step will be creating a request for proposal, and we will draft that scope of work and share it with you guys before we actually go out. We're trying to make this a process that we could really find the right researcher who can perform the work with an equity lens. That was important to Dr. Bates, that we have the right consultant to really help us move this forward. So in our next meeting, you will have a draft scope of work for the request for a proposal.
Any questions? All right, did you have a question?
Yeah. I'm sorry, maybe I forgot, but why did we decide that we did not need a subcommittee for that?
I believe because we already had two representatives, Maurice and Lisa with both on kind of the team to talk about this, but we can make it a formal subcommittee and request others to join us. I believe you also was part of that team, or no?
No.
Yeah, but if you want to create an official subcommittee, we can do that.
I just, I think we should open it up, and then if more people are interested, we have a subcommittee, but if just Maurice and Leisha are working on this, then we leave it as is, but maybe opening it up to more people.
I'm open to either or. At the last time that we spoke about it being a subcommittee, we didn't vote it in, so it is something that we would have to vote in, I think, because we voted in the allocation subcommittee, and at that time, we chose not to vote in this subcommittee, so if the majority of us feel like we want to have it as an official subcommittee, we probably need to vote it in, or if we feel like it can continue forward as a smaller, just informal group that's informing the scope of work, then we can keep it as such. Thoughts?
I feel like the subcommittee should have more representation of the with a community-based voice. And I think, if that would be more of an equity lens, and that would be also, then the community be invited into that process.
I like to also agree with that. I think we should make it an official subcommittee so it could be consistent with our practices. So. So does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion to turn the committee into a subcommittee for the impact study.
All right, so all those in favor, we're just going to do a simple yes and no vote. We're not going to do a motion, so if you want to turn it into a subcommittee, just say yes.
This would be a good time to introduce our new voting method.
I'll leave that up to the facilitator.
And we have the red and green.
Yes.
Well, we are going to, under new business or under new items, we're going to begin addressing some of the strategy and some of the specifics in terms of how decisions will be made based on conversations that happened among the committee. So we can come back to that. The red and green sheets are here and so forth. We can come back to the discussion. And if you're willing to table a decision at this moment, we can then make the decision around the subcommittee after that conversation has happened. So if we will stay on point, we can then talk about the item number 2 under old business.
Great. So I had an opportunity along with Ms. Smith, Michael Davis, Dorsey, and Mr. Herschel to participate in a facilitation training that Dr. Holt put on last week, I believe, at Prosper Portland. He walked us through some great techniques and strategies to be able to conduct and lead our subcommittees when we have those meetings. Anybody else that attended that would like to chime in, please feel free. And if you missed it, I think that Prosper Portland has been gracious enough to offer us other opportunities for trainings like the one that Dr. Holt put on. So we'll be looking forward to that. If there is something specific that maybe you want to learn about or have more experience in doing, please let us know. And we can see if he or someone else can put together a training for that particular topic and or skill that you're trying to build. Anyone else? And I don't know, perhaps it would be possible to share the PowerPoint with everyone on the committee, even though they didn't participate in the training, or I don't know if it will be, without having the training, if it will make sense, but just a thought there.
Well, I sent it on to Yvonne and Kimberly. I believe you both have it. So I'm totally open to the committee having it and looking through it.
Okay, perfect.
Absolutely.
We'll send it out.
All right, thank you. That's it?
All right. Well, let's move right in then to new business, which is the voting procedures. And the discussion around the process for decision-making, based on the communications of the committee, has been talking about going to something simple as simple majority vote. since you are a committee, there is no requirement that says you have to use one system over another. And based on again, the feedback of the committee, what the majority have indicated is a simple majority rule. And what we have there are some sheets for red and green little placeholders or cards, if we can disseminate those, if we can pass those out. And the idea is that when it comes to voting on a topic or an item, if you are in favor, you would hold up the green. If you're not in favor, you would hold up the red. Those will be counted, and then the majority of red would mean no. Whatever it is being voted on would not pass, or if the majority is green, then it would be yes. And whatever's being voted on would pass. So it's simple majority. Comments, thoughts, questions about that? It's coming up soon. Number 6, public, a moment for voices to engage. So I appreciate it. But if you just hold on for a second, we'll get to you. Thank you.
Just really quick, as far as discussion, so how is discussion handled? How is amendments, if I propose something to be voted on, how does someone else go ahead and amend? And if their amendment is not necessarily acceptable to me, am I able to retract my motion to vote, or how does the whole process work?
So any discussions, that's a great question, any discussions in simple majority would be held during that process. So if you make a suggestion about something, whoever has questions among the committee can interact at that very moment. And whatever needs to be discussed or processed can be processed through that manner. And then either chair, if they feel like the discussion has gone far enough, can settle that discussion, table it for another time, and or move to or suggest a specific direction. Does that make sense?
So as far as you had mentioned the chair either tabling or continuing, is that for any motion or any motion made? And so if I was, example, if I was to make a motion, at that point, can the chair table that motion ahead of discussion? Or if, let's say, at what point is the chair interjecting on tabling discussion and motions?
And anyone can weigh in on this. Any of the chairs can weigh in on it. The whole idea is to expedite the process and simplify decision-making. So the goal would be to be thorough around any discussion or any thought that had been brought up as it relates to the agenda items that are identified. If it is a topic that's off agenda, then that's what I would presume would be tabled until another discussion. If it's a topic that's on agenda, it would be discussed within the time frame, depending on what else is on the agenda, to make sure that it is thought through and processed. I think it's to some degree a judgment call. Again, if it's on agenda, then it's about the time frame. If it's not an agenda item, then it would be something that most likely would be referred to another moment to stay on track. Does that make sense?
And I don't want to hold up too much time, but as far as like new business, if it comes up under new business, then it's a new item. And if it's, okay, all right, I'll let it go. Thank you.
We have time. We can continue. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I guess for me, ideally, is the process, however the process is being worked out, it to be actually written down. And so that way we actually have, if there is something that is, there's a multiple difference of opinions and viewpoints, we actually have something to fall back on as far as this process. So ideally, rather than just a green, red, or no vote, when does that stuff actually kick into play? And so a lot of stuff that we're talking about right now, you've mentioned, but ideally for me, to have that written down so I could understand the process and can refer back to that process.
absolutely capturing and makes sense. Haben?
The reason we decided when we were doing a debriefing meeting to go with this method is because the old method felt awkward and didn't fit the committee, and we were just doing it just to do it. So in my head, the way I envisioned it is, let's say Maurice and Leisha, like you guys have two different point of views, and if the whole committee, if you can't explain your position to the whole committee to arrive at a vote, then we table that to the next meeting. Like, there's no reason that we have to make decisions right away. So it's just less formal, and we feel like this one would be more fitting to the energy of our committee. So that's the only thing. I don't think a lot of things will change. It's just we'll have discussions, and if you guys, I mean, let's say we have two opposing views, then we keep discussing it till we arrive at a point where a majority vote can be made on an issue.
And I just want to be clear, I think that this committee actually works really well together, so that wasn't my concern. It was just, for me, ideally, is to actually have something written down on a piece of paper so that I could look and say whether I'm out of order or if I actually should speak up about something. And so, but I don't necessarily see us having major disagreements. I think we're all on the same page and going in the same direction. But again, I just want to make sure that I have some sort of process written down so I can make sure that I'm not out of order.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And part of the reason this probably works is because our committee oftentimes seems to value discussion, and we're kind of on the same side of things. So it seems like it works. But before the next meeting, we can come up with some sort of writing. And if you want to be involved in that process so that you have an input in what that looks like, that would be great too.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Oscar?
So will this new voting method also require quorum to happen? So if there's not quorum, can there still be a vote and just with a simple majority be passed?
It's an excellent question. Based on the charter and the information within the charter, your language, if I recall correctly, is the simple majority of the quorum. So of the quorum that's present, as long as there is a quorum present to make and enact decisions, a simple majority of that quorum would be sufficient for the decision being made.
I would like to talk to our legal staff about that, because I believe the last advice or counsel I got from them was that you have to have a quorum of the officially seated members. It's not a simple majority. It's not the quorum of those who are here tonight, but it's a quorum of the seated members.
Excellent distinction. However, the quorum of, I shouldn't say however, does that still mean, though, again, I'm just referring to the language that's in the charter, that would still mean that the simple majority of the seated quorum could make a decision? Would that be accurate?
No.
Okay. So it would have to be a full quorum making a unanimous decision?
Of the total, yes. The full quorum meaning the 15 official members.
Okay, then we need to revisit and make sure that the charter articulates that.
Yeah, so I
because the
can
language in
read-
the charter does not.
I can
at this
read
moment.
what the charter says, if it's helpful for everyone. It says, if Oversight Committee recommendations represent a broad base of collective wisdom about city priorities and services and needs, the Oversight Committee intends to work by consensus in making decisions or in developing recommendations to be forwarded to the appropriate individual or body. If consensus cannot be reached and an issue or action requires a formal decision of the Oversight Committee, such decision shall be made by open vote of a simple majority of the Oversight Committee, provided that a quorum of the Oversight Committee is seated in a properly noticed meeting. The chair will tabulate and announce the results of any vote. That's what it says under voting procedures.
But when you say seated, it means I interpret that, and I need to confirm that with our legal team, that it has to be 7 of the 15 members to make a vote.
That is correct.
And that's not how you interpret what's written in?
That's how I interpret that.
Okay.
So we just need to be clear on language and terminology.
Okay.
Make sure that happens. Be great. Yes, Shanisha.
So what I'm hearing, though, is if in fact that number is not present, then that vote cannot happen.
Yes.
So that's what happened the last time we had it. We didn't have enough numbers present, so we weren't able to.
Yes, that's going to happen anytime there's not enough members present to vote, whether we use the red or the green or another method of voting.
Okay,
There will always need to be
at least.
at least a quorum
Just
of,
7.
yes, for any decisions that are being made. But what we're discussing at this moment is whether or not that quorum needs to be in total unity, or if the quorum can still use a simple majority vote. So based on the language in the charter, what needs to be clarified is whether or not the quorum needs to be 100% in agreement with the decision, and/or if the quorum can have a simple majority, meaning if 8 of the 15 members have a vote, because it's 8 is a quorum, and 5 and 3 were to decide, can that carry, or would that not carry? So,
And that can. That's the correct interpretation.
okay.
Mr. Holt, I apologize, I have to leave, I have a prior engagement. My question was, what do you do when you have, say, all 15?
Can you come to the mic, sir? Thank you. Your name?
My name is Keith Edwards. My question is, what do you do when you have all 15 present and you have 5 abstentions and you have a 5 and 5 vote, tie vote? What do you do in that circumstance?
At that point, I think it gets deferred to the chair and co-chair to make a determination about how to re-examine, how to then talk through what needs to be talked through. So I think the decision would be tabled and not go forward in that moment. You don't have a majority.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the, Shanisha, your name tag is still up?
Oh, sorry.
Any other questions? So just to be clear, then, a quorum is required for any decisions made. Based on the language in the charter, a simple majority of the seated quorum can make a decision about something going forward. So 5 of the 3, or 5 of the 8 can make a determination about what happens, or putting something in place to enact it. I want to make sure that everyone on the committee is clear about that. Any questions specifically in regard to a simple majority of a quorum?
But the 8 have to be present, just 5 of the 8 can make this determination?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Okay. So I'll ask a different question to the committee. Committee, based on the discussion that's happened, are you comfortable enacting this approach?
For me, I feel like I feel like we need to have something in writing to understand the process. I think that Keith's question was a decent one. It wouldn't be one that I would have thought of. And so what I would say, and it seems like you did answer the question, but I'm not sure if any of the committee members could have answered that question. I think it might have opened up a debate on whether or not, who's where. So with that said, in order to kind of move forward, I'd like to see actually a document. I don't mind for tonight kind of doing it, but I'd like to see it kind of written out so that I have a full understanding of my duties as a committee member.
And I can work with Robin and Lisa and yourself to create that document and have it ready for the next meeting.
That's what I was gonna say. Let's put it.
Push your button.
Let's have it on the agenda again for next meeting, and let's get a document together that explains it. I think it's a great method just because our committee is not very formal and it fits our style, but I agree, like, we have new members, we have people that come, so like, for people to understand it, a document that accompanies it might be good. So Maurice is interested, Leisha and I, when we do our debriefing meeting, we can talk about it. And if anyone else is also interested, feel free to send an email and then be part of that conversation. And again, every change that and recommendations we make is with the committee in mind and to make it more efficient and to work better. So don't feel like because you're not the chair, you can't speak up. Like, you can be part of every process. So it's just to make it facilitate things and make it better so that we're effective and doing the right thing with this committee. I really like the way we're going. So I appreciate Maurice, you speaking up, and other people feel free to even send an email and say, I want this to be part of that document, you know? Okay, thank you.
Leisha?
Yes. So just so I can have some comparative, like, ideas in my mind, if we were to continue on with the Robert's Rules of Order or the motion and the voting way, how would that question be answered in that way? So I can just visualize what it looks like. So Mr. Edwards' question of if it's 5-5 and 5 abstentions, how would that be resolved in those terms, so that I could just have a comparative sense? Or anybody who would know.
Maybe that should be part of the discussion.
So I think that if there isn't an answer to that, just because, or if we don't know the answer to that, it still puts us in the same position of saying, we don't know the answer to that, whether it's Robert's Rules of Order or the red and green. So I just don't want us to do things because they are traditional or they've been done somewhere else. And I want us to think about our committee and what works best for us, because these are problems or concerns that we would have to solve regardless. And so that's just a comment, and I'll leave it like that. Thank you.
Dorsey, you had your name tag. Oh, okay. All right. Maurice, were you gonna?
But I want to say, do we need to consider amending the charter to document this new process? And I know if we do come up with a process for when there's a tie, that needs to be as part of the voting process in the charter. So I think we would need to amend the charter to kind of reflect this new voting process.
Is this process new? I mean, I think the cards are throwing people off. The cards are still a yes or a no. And it's just a visual yes or no versus a verbal or a hands up. So I just want to make sure this
Well, I don't
process.
think that's a new process, but I think we don't have language that talks about when it's a tie or when there's a.
So just the tie part, but not the actual voting process itself? Okay. And does that need to be in the charter?
Yes, I think it does. I mean, because it's part of how you make decisions.
Okay.
Maurice?
And I would agree on amending the charter, and I'm not opposed to a new process at all. I think it just streamlines things. And I'm not an expert on Robert's rules. That would have been a good question to ask Keith Edwards, because I'm pretty sure he gave us an answer. But with that said, yeah, with Robert's rules, I know I could look up something, and it's kind of finite, but I am not attached to Robert's rules. What I am attached to is actually having something down on a piece of paper, having it amended into the bylaws, and so that we can actually follow the rules that we set in place and not have the rules constantly change. I've been on some boards where the rules are constantly changing and then no one knows the rules, and it kind of bogs things down. So I would rather prefer whatever decisions we make that we amend it to the bylaws, and that becomes our process.
Okay.
I'll just change two terms. One, we talk about this one on a regular basis, charter versus bylaws. This is a committee, not a board. So we talk about amendments or decisions or additions or retractions. And then in terms of language, the language is in the charter around majority vote already. So the only thing you would need to distinguish is how you handle a tie per adventure. there is one. And I think the whole goal around this was to expedite decision-making process, not to convolute or to make things difficult, based on the conversation that we had in debriefing the meetings with the two co-chairs, and I believe you, Kimberly. So it was this an idea of going to a simple majority vote, and I can't remember if Haben, if you introduced the red and green, or if Alicia introduced the red and green as a possible functionality. So, again, the goal is to expedite, simplify the process to move things forward, simply in light of the decision-making process that you already have. So where you weigh in, where you recommend, where you will then determine how to do that and how to do that simplistically. And hopefully everybody has that decision-making process and is familiar with it. Sir.
Forgive me. In most cases, in all regulated meetings, the chair or the president or the vice president has 2 votes. And whenever there's a tie, you see it on TV all the time on C-SPAN. The vice president breaks that tie because it has opportunity, or someone outside of the committee comes in that vested and knows something about the procedure and what we're discussing, they get to break that tie. Or the chairperson has 2 votes. And some things I've been involved with always had where they walk in the door with 2 votes instantly. And that's how you kill off that tie vote. But if somebody respected and everybody votes for that person to have it, or the hierarchy is no, I don't see the hierarchy here yet.
Co-chairs.
Co-chair and chair. Mm-hmm. And I guess you would have to vote on that also, who would have that tie-breaking vote.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great suggestion. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. So in light of the fun we've just had,
More fun.
change is always an interesting dynamic. There was a recommendation to create a subcommittee. We postponed voting from the old business and to put it into new business to be addressed after the discussion around the voting process. So, would the committee want at this moment to engage making a decision in regard to whether or not to have a subcommittee to address the impact study? So, green is going up, green is going up, green is going up, green is going up. Okay, so you're ready. All I asked was, are you ready to make a decision? Not if you were making a decision. So the answer is yes, we're ready to make a decision about it. Okay, so I will then ask the question. Not that I have to, Chair, you can ask it, but I will since I'm talking. All who are in favor of creating a subcommittee for the impact study, if you hold up your green. Okay, opposed. Oh, well, looks like 100%. So you will create a subcommittee around the impact study. Would you like to weigh in on specifics and particulars, either co-chair, around how you want to go about doing that?
I think we'll follow the same format that we used for the other subcommittees. There should be a sign-in sheet perhaps for people who are interested on participating. Once you fill out that sign-in sheet, Yvonne will send out maybe a doodle poll to talk about when we would meet next. And then we would choose maybe a lead of that. And so maybe Maurice, since you've already been, just a suggestion, already been so involved would be a good choice. But yes, following the same format.
Sorry. I was actually going to suggest Maurice, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but you've been very involved, you've been consistent in this committee, and you seem very passionate about it. So I think you would be a good lead, but anyways, I think have a sign-up sheet, and if Maurice is not interested in doing it, maybe somebody's the lead. And to those who don't know what the lead does, is the lead of a subcommittee usually sets the meetings, sets the agenda, works with Portland staff to get the paperwork necessary for the meetings so that the meetings are efficient and kind of leads the meeting. So it's not a lot of work. You will be there already, but just setting up the meeting and the agenda for the subcommittee, and then bringing back that information back to the larger committee of what the subcommittee discussed.
Thank you very much. Janisha?
I have a question. Mine has to do with, does the subcommittee only reflect who is here right now, or does it have any community-based involvement? Will we be opening it up to other community-based involvement, or would it be just those who are part of this larger committee?
So right now, it would just be the folks that are a part of this larger committee.
Okay.
Committee members are welcome at these meetings. I feel like Prosper Portland would not mind if they're at the subcommittee meetings. We typically haven't had that, but because they're not shared on the website, correct? The subcommittee meetings?
That's shared on the website, right, Yvonne? And all of our meetings are public meetings.
So they can definitely attend and they have public comment. I also wanted to talk again about our email address, and so maybe we can start adding that to the website, to our documentation that we hand out, materials that we hand out, so that folks can email if they want to and participate in those types of ways. I think that they should maybe help inform information, but that's something that maybe the consultant would do once they are awarded the contract, that they definitely are key in this process, but I don't know if sitting on the subcommittee is that place.
Okay, that's just a question that comes to me on a continual basis. How does the community be able to be part of this or get involved or have input?
And I appreciate you for that. Yes, stay saying that.
One suggestion is to make sure that, as committee members, since you come from such a broad reach and have a scope of relationship, is to make sure that you're disseminating, sharing the information from the Oversight Committee to the community and to those you have relationship with. It's part of the idea of having such a broad representation, is that you take back the information to your realm of influence and connection relationship. And then also making them aware of how to stay abreast and be present at these gatherings and meetings to be informed. And then, as Kimberly just mentioned, all of the meetings are public meetings. And so since they're public meetings, then it's open for all parties to come and participate. All right.
I would like to, I'm sorry, I would like to suggest that if you are interested in joining that committee, to sign up tonight, or just let us know, because there probably will be draft materials that I would like you to review prior to our next meeting. So to be, a little bit proactive, it would be great if anyone else would like to be part of that committee. And we will send out an invitation to those who aren't here tonight to see if they want to be part of it. But it would be great to know, so that you can review some of the draft materials before the next meeting.
Harmon.
And to respond to you, Chanisha, we are both on the outreach committee, and something that we've been discussing is our outreach committee. Our outreach has not been great. Like, we haven't had a lot of attendances at this meeting. So during our subcommittee meeting, maybe bring this up, and maybe this is a focus. How do we make sure that the community is engaged more than just coming to our meeting? Do we want them to be involved in the subcommittees? That's something we can definitely discuss. And then we contact all the leads, and we can tell them maybe at each subcommittee meeting, maybe try to get like some representation from the community. But that could be a suggestion that we can bring. Thank you for bringing that.
Janisha, did you have another comment?
I think that's my main concern, is that the community is aware and involved.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Kimberly Moreland, you are next on our agenda, selecting a proxy.
When we developed the charter, we had some concerns at the time about having a quorum present at each of our meetings. And so we put language in our project charter that would ensure that we would have a quorum by creating proxies. So, and a proxy would be able to attend the meeting, and at the time, we thought that they would be able to count towards the quorum, and they wouldn't be able to vote, but they would be able to sit at the table and be considered in as a head count for the quorum. But after further consideration, our legal staff determined that that is not a legal process and that a proxy doesn't represent the quorum and it doesn't have voting rights as well. I mean, you can have somebody come in your place and sit at the table, but they're there to listen and to kind of go back and tell you what happened at the meeting, but they have no voting authority and they don't count towards the quorum. And so I had these forms created and that you guys all have a copy of. And it allows you to select someone to represent you in your absence. And you have to present this form at each meeting. So you would have to have them fill it out prior to the meeting and submit it to me every time you was not present. So it's not like a form that we would keep and pull it out when you're absent. It would be something that has to be filled out every time you decide, you have an excused absence. But any questions? I see. Leisha?
So I'm confused. If I'm remembering back to when we had these discussions, it was actually Wayne who brought up the proxy idea when we were going back and forth on whether or not we wanted to lower the amount of people on the committee or have proxies as an option. And so we decided to keep the 15 in our charter because we would be able to have proxies who would allow us to have the quorum no matter the ups and downs of the committee. And so now, 2 months later, he's telling us that we don't have that option. And,
Yes.
and why don't we have that option?
And
do we have the opportunity to change our charter again? I mean, this is I think it speaks to what Marie's point of having to change our charter again and again. And I'm not quite sure it seems like we should have more examples that we would be able to look at where other committees have had these types of situations come up and that we would have known that proxies don't count for that situation because we proceeded with this charter with the understanding that the proxies would be able to present quorum for us.
You're absolutely right. That was understanding, and that's why we created the proxy language in our charter. But to that point, we have call-ins now, which I think we kind of corrected the quorum problem. I'm not doing this to make excuses for it, but we have kind of corrected that process by having call-in available. And also, when we did the research, we realized that it was only 2 meetings where we didn't have a quorum, so it wasn't as a bigger issue as we thought. But if you, please show your look.
Because I'm trying to understand if it's a real legal issue or an issue of convenience or changing of mind, because the reasons that you're saying right now sound more like a convenience or a changing of mind versus here's the legal documentation that says that proxies are not allowed for this type of committee.
It's not, it is a legal issue, and I can have our legal staff, draft a response to that and tell you why and where, what statute.
And I'm sorry if I'm giving you looks. It wasn't on purpose. It's not intended for you.
No.
She's not wearing her facilitator's hat tonight. Robin?
Leisha just has her facial reaction.
Yeah.
So I have a couple questions. I guess one of the issues I think, I can't speak for Leisha, but as a co-chair, where I face sometimes frustration is where we get half information. So like today, if it was just, okay, we can't do proxy, and this is the reason we can't do proxy, and give us the legal wording, whatever, there wouldn't be much discussion. But always, I feel like we always get half of the information and then we're fishing to get the whole picture. So I think for me personally, especially with a finance background, that's kind of frustrating because I just want facts and that's it. Like, that's all I need. And secondly, like, I thought my understanding of proxy was someone from the committee. So for example, Maurice is my proxy, so he has 2 votes. And we discussed like the chair is having 2 votes possibly. So what's the legal?
No, it was an outside person, someone, it's always, from my understanding, it always has been someone outside the committee who you select to represent you. It was never another committee person.
And is that like
And that's-
possible? Has that been researched? Can we do that?
Yes, that's legal, and that's,
That's legal?
and acceptable to have an outside person. Oh, you mean to have another committee member represent you?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, that's something I would have to go back to legal staff and ask. We had always saw a proxy as somebody outside of the committee.
Well, it doesn't even make sense to have someone outside the committee who has no understanding of the committee to be part of the discussion. But for me, my understanding was Maurice would be, oh, we're in the subcommittee together. He knows a lot of my thoughts about things. He's my proxy. I designated him, and he gets 2 votes. Like, that's
But
the,
remember, a proxy doesn't get a vote. That's why they're just there to listen and to go back and inform you what happened at the meeting. So a proxy doesn't get a vote.
So I just want to, I think it's important for us, really, I think Yvonne sent out what was once the final charter.
And you have it in front of you.
I think it's
too.
very important for everyone to really read through their charter, understand the definitions, and understand what role or responsibility or actions or whatever information is in here. So I'll read the definition of proxy that we understood it to be. A non-voting representative for a committee member who may attend committee meetings on behalf of a committee member for purposes of information gathering and establishing a quorum. So they were never intended to vote. They were to allow us to be able to make votes when people didn't show up and we didn't have a quorum, which it may have been only 2 meetings, but it affected us where we could not move forward for months. So I don't want to diminish it by saying, oh, we only had 2 meetings where we didn't have a quorum. Those 2 meetings were back to back or close together because it stopped us from moving forward with our meeting agenda, and it just caused the issue. So we need to revisit this all together. And if you don't understand something or if there's questions, everyone please speak up and ask those questions so that we all have a good understanding and working together and moving forward. And there is not any questions after
And
that
I
point.
agree, and I will have someone from our legal staff present at our next meeting, because that might help.
Take a deep breath.
Herschel.
What I hear you guys saying, you're saying 2 different things. A committee person that's not at the meeting but still has a vote. And a proxy person is more like a secretary collecting information. It just so happened that night you have a vote, but you don't have a quorum, you have someone sitting in. So you can't take that vote that night because you don't have enough voting members. Generally, when a member not there and you know you're going to have a vote that night and they can't have to go out of town, they send their vote in, that form that you sent me, they can send that form in if they abreast of the information, and that's their vote, even if they're not there. The other person could sit in, but the vote, the committee person can't vote while they're not here, even if you need the vote.
Yeah, no, they can't vote if they're not here.
There's no vote less than
We,
here.
or, we have never addressed that. We had never thought about whether or not a committee member can vote if they're not present at the meeting.
But they,
So that's something we can talk about.
but did they sit in on all the information and know everything about what's being voted on?
A proxy,
No, I'm not, proxy is what caused the conflict. Proxy is two different things in my eyes. The committee member, I'm staying with the committee member, trying to vote within that. You need a quorum to even start a meeting.
right?
But the vote, the committee member should be able to vote, and he sent his vote in day before to the chair or co-chair. And when the vote come about, his vote is sealed. And you could, but the proxy, I don't understand why you need a proxy just to have the meeting.
We never addressed that. That could be a solution,
We never addressed what?
having a member vote if they're not here,
So,
and having a sealed.
Hold on,
We did
Shanisha.
address that. We
Yeah,
did address,
Shanisha.
because we talked about having an email vote, we talked about calling on the phone and vote. I mean, we did address a member not being here, and we were told that a member had to be here to vote
Yeah.
by legal. So we did address it. The proxy was so that those of us who were here could reach a quorum to vote the simple majority up or down on an action. So if the key is really having whatever legal is going to come back and say that we can or cannot do be true and be sustainable, right? Because we're going back and forth. We did have these discussions, we were
Yeah,
told one thing, and so,
We did talk about,
but, okay, I see other,
Yes, we want to go down. Maurice, you had yours up?
It was me.
Okay.
Karen, I'm just saying that I just got on the internet and all this thing about proxies, and just looking on at a website, I see that there's, the role of the proxy is different depending on the composure of the organization. Like nonprofit proxies can't do the same things that a for-profit proxy, but since this is a government agency committee, I don't know the answer to that, so
yeah, I
there
don't.
could be an answer to Robert's rules, or it could be, we decide as a committee what we want a proxy to be, but the legal people would have to be involved. Thanks.
Right, yeah, so that's the key, is like, we've decided several times what we want the proxy to be, but legal keeps changing it for us. So if we could get, again, some real, accurate, substantial, sustainable information, it would be so appreciated, so that we won't spend time at the table like this.
Shanisha, and then Haman.
just from listening, it seems as though a proxy is powerless. He doesn't have the ability, they're just there, you know, for that missing person, and so they don't have the power, sustainable power for anything. They're just a person sitting in. So why do we need proxies?
Because it allowed us to have quorum, so that those of us who were here could vote on an action. So if there were 8 members, or if there's 15 of us, and only 6 of us showed up, but we had those 2 proxies in attendance to give us a total of 8 people around the table, the 6 committee members could still vote on an action and pass it without. And that could be, you know, a tie or 2 to 3 vote, or 2 to 4 vote, whatever it may be. But it gave us action, it made it actionable for us to vote, to have those 2 people present. That was the purpose of having the proxies. So they didn't have voting power. They were, so if I were
Just a
picking
number.
my proxy, it would be Mr. Brown. Is it Brown?
Yes.
It'd be Mr. Brown, who I know has been here every meeting that we've had just about for the last 4 months. So he's up to date on information, he's engaged, he's participated. So if he came to sit in my place in my absence, I feel like he would be a good person to represent at least what we are talking about, what we've been talking about as a committee. His presence wouldn't allow him to vote, but it would allow everybody else at the table who is a committee member to vote. So that was the purpose of the proxy. But now we're being told, and Mr. Facilitator, I would want to kind of move us forward, because we are in limbo. We can't do anything because we don't have legal is telling us something that we aren't prepared for.
So it still feels as though a proxy is powerless.
It is, it's
So,
definitely
We
powerful.
want to hear from Haben and Maurice and then we'll table.
I actually was gonna suggest that we move forward and the charter committee actually gets together with Prosper Portland, gets information from legal, and address proxy, tiebreaker, and voting procedure. And then we come back with our finding for next charter meeting. For now, we table it because I just feel like we're gonna go around in circles.
Perfect. Maurice, did you want to weigh in or wait? Okay. And we will keep moving forward. My suggestion is to recall why the proxy came up in the first place, to remember why it was even something you guys considered. So I think that's important as you think through how it works, is to remember why it was necessary to put it in the first place. C, under number 5, Interstate Corridor Urban Renewal Area Budget. I don't have a name associated. Oh, Mr. Campbell.
Hello.
I think they're going to control that. He's going to control that.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So I wanted to come, and I believe this is in regards to giving an update, and there were some questions around the Budget Advisory Committee's role with our recent general fund process. And I want to say that in one of the previous meetings, I wasn't present here, there were some questions around some of the budget cuts that were given, and also some of the add-back packages. Just to give a quick kind of history on where we've been this year. Portland has, as an economy, has been wildly strong. We've been in the top 10 in the country in terms of growth and a lot of strength. And there's also been a lot of surplus with regards to the city's budget. And however, though, even though there's been that surplus, there have also been a number of budget kind of things that have already been encumbered or needing to be called upon. So even though we have millions of dollars in surplus, such as the police, their process, or homeless, there's an Office of Homeless, I'm going to totally butcher it, but there are Joint Office of Homeless Services. They have already allocated a number of those dollars towards those particular efforts. And so we have been required by the city yet again, which has been kind of the practice of doing a 5% cut on our general fund request. And so we, as Prosper Portland, went through a process where we convened a committee of stakeholders and community members, which we called them the Budget Advisory Committee. We had Maurice here on behalf of this body be able to attend and participate. And through all that process, it was painful because, 5%, it doesn't seem significant, but this is the second year since I've been working at Prosper Portland in a row where we've had to do this. And we've kind of likened it to maybe the first time around, it felt like you were cutting fat, but this time it was like cutting muscle in terms of a lot of the programming of how it's helping small businesses, how it was impacting the neighborhoods. And so the final budget exercise that we had to go through is we were required to cut a little over $250,000 from our overall budget. And the Budget Advisory Committee really walked through that whole process and came up with a recommendation. And I want to say in that, I just want to pull up some of the details of the things that were being asked to be cut. And I think this is where the questions came around why this and as opposed to that. Again, keep in mind, almost everything we put forth, all those programs are important. It's not like it was something that was arbitrary or not necessary or was just trivial, like everything really meant. And so I think the Budget Advisory Committee was really tasked with a very challenging effort that they had to commit to. So some of the things that they had to recommend in terms of being on the chopping block for cuts were things such as, and I will pull this up and try to be brief. I don't know if you guys still have that information in front of you. If not, we can provide it again. But such things as Venture Portland, which is an organization that works throughout the city helping business organizations throughout the city do their work to support small business growth through our commercial corridors and neighborhoods. They were required to cut some of their funding, again, 5% there. We also put on the chopping block to cut a healthcare cluster, which is in our business and industry department. We also had to put forth to cut We call it our working capital, which I think this was one of the big questions, which is a little around $51,000 towards working capital or small business loans. And I think those are all of the ones that were set forth as cuts to be made to get us towards that goal of a little over $250,000 that was required. And so, and we also, coupled with the cuts, we also went through a process of doing add-back packages, which is, yes, we're going to go through the exercise of doing the 5% cuts, and here are the places where we feel like it's not preferred, but we will need to do it, and those were the ones that I mentioned. But we also were able to allow a supplemental ask, which is add-back packages, which allows you to say, even though we cut it here, we really would like to see it still be in play. It also, in the add-back package, it allows you to also call out some additional programming opportunities that you want. And so in our add-back packages, we included things such as our small business growth programs, which is, I think it was like $275,000. There was another add-back package for work being done in East Portland along the division line for, there's a bus transit project that has been in the works. And so there was funding being requested to help with small business development along that line, because typically when you have infrastructure development, it impacts businesses more adversely. So how do we get ahead of that? So there was a number of add-back packages that were also submitted to our office, city office, budget office, which we call CBO. Where we are in the process now, CBO has received both the cut packages as well as the add-back packages. They review everything, and then they make a recommendation to the city council, which they've done. And so we're at this place now where the city council will go into a work session. They'll review CBO's recommendations, and they will also themselves think through their priorities that they have. They will also allow in the next month or so opportunities for community engagement, where you can come to the city and you can share your thoughts, you can advocate for things and things like that. So even though the recommendations have been submitted, and even though CBO has made their recommendations of what they approved or not, it's not fully guaranteed that what we had to go through is actually going to show up, but that was the exercise that we're currently in. And so I'm sure there's probably a few more things that I can share, but I just want to pause and make sure that I did at least give a decent picture of where we are in this year's budget. And then I also wanted to make space to answer some of the questions, which I think specifically around the working capital, I was told was an important one that people had questions around. Why was that one submitted?
Tori,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a quick question. Are you talking about this is money that's being subtracted from the $300 and so million that is supposed to be distributed within the
The interstate?
interstate?
No, this is not related to that.
not-
This is just our overall general fund budget that we work with within our economic development
Okay.
department for the city, for Prosper Portland, but we had Maurice on behalf of this group be a part of that. And so I believe he came and did a report back, and there were just some questions on why were there cuts being made here versus somewhere else. Yes, ma'am.
So one of the things I'd ask you is, I know that they were cutting into the bone so much so there was no fat there. If this comes up next year, has Prosper Portland looked at that and possibly said there's nothing left to cut? Or how does Prosper Portland, because you're correct, this is the second year in a row. Yeah, is this going to be an ongoing thing until you're at zero, or so I guess my question is just generically for Prosper Portland is, as far as participating in this exercise of cutting programs, at what point does Prosper Portland say, we've looked at it and we can't find 5%?
Great question. I think that's something that we wrestle with as well. I don't think it'll ever be a time when we cannot participate in that process. We are required to do so as per receiving funding from the city. However, I think it does raise us an important question that as an agency, the relevancy of our work does matter, and it should matter in such a way that these cuts, although we're required to do the exercise, can we prove out, can the story of the work that's being done and its impact be to a point where it allows us to avoid having to be cut even though we do the exercise. And I think that is both a challenge for the work that we're doing, but also the value of having community members and those who benefit of programs come out and advocate on behalf of the work that we do in the city. So I think that's one piece. I don't think we can never stop being responsive in that way, but I think we wrestle with that as well. If push comes to shove, it's also pressing us like with anyone else. When you realize that certain funding streams either are drying up or you're under threat, you also have to be nimble yourself and say, are there other ways that we can fund the work that we're doing, particularly because we're doing work strategically around trying to close wealth gaps and address, underserved and marginalized small business owners, particularly entrepreneurs of color and women, something that's very necessary. It's not only a moral imperative, it's just economically smart to do that. How do we continue to find other sources of funding so we're also considering that, like, are there ways we can leverage foundations to support our works? Are there other avenues by which we can be more empowered and less at the whim of the city? But I would say that I don't think we will ever stop the conversation, but there are things that we can do.
Just a quick recommendation is to lean on the community that you guys are serving to actually advocate for the work that you're doing. So I don't think that Prosper Portland does a good job of doing that. And I think that might help to reduce this constant request for you to cut programs that are vital to our city.
Yeah, I agree. As an example, we had one of our participants of one of our growth programs geared towards women entrepreneurs come out and testify. There was some additional funding that was ideal to help strengthen their program. It was to be cut. We encourage them that this is a space where you can share your opinion and your perspective. And as a result of that person testifying, those dollars were recouped. So I think they were recovered and now allowed to strengthen the program. So your point is well taken.
I guess I feel like that's a lot of information for the committee to take on without any paperwork. And what I would like personally to see as the lead for the subcommittee, the investment allocation, is I want us to meet between now and the next meeting. And all the things that you said, it's 5%, 5% of what, exactly how much money. The documents that we got in the past, they don't break down the amounts that you mentioned. So I think I want more details, and then we come back to the committee and give that information in a way that it gives the information that people need to process the information and ask questions. I just don't think, I'm a numbers person and I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around it. I guess, yeah, my question is that possible? Can you guys provide us a breakdown? What's the initial amount? What's the cut? And then you said add packages. So where's that where's that money coming from? Just like we can ask questions in the subcommittee, detailed questions. That way, by the time we come here, we have the answers for everyone. So I just feel like this is a bigger discussion, and I would like to bring this up as an old business in our next meeting. And I just want to lean on Prosper Portland to give us the staff, to give us the information that we need to process all this information. I feel like I have half the picture.
Sure, that's totally fine. We'd be glad to do it. I will say that Maurice, as a representative of the group, has all of that information as he was present at those meetings. So I think it's just a matter of you and I getting together and saying what is missing. There have also been updates that have been done as the process has moved along too. So the information that he's provided, there's some subsequent documents that can say, and here's some of the updates. And again, I completely feel you, Hub, and I wanted to be respectful tonight to say I know that I was being invited to come back up to address a few questions, but no way in the world would I expect you to be able to digest all the verbiage I said. So I'd rather be more effective, and if that means giving you a chance to look over additional information and even having those questions like written out so that I can prepare in advance for specifics, that totally works.
Great. And I want to address this question more to the committee. Like, what do you guys think? About tabling this as an old business for our next meeting and getting more of a breakdown, and even emailing the investment allegation team what kind of stuff that you guys want to see. Because for me personally, like saying, oh, it's 5%, it's around $250,000. I mean, I kind of want to know the exact, like, how the breakdown is.
Sure.
And so I feel the same way. Like, I think our committee really loves information. So, like, maybe getting all the information, and then the committee meets, the subcommittee meets, and we break down that information into chunks that make sense and present it to the committee. I would like to see that kind of engagement. And I would like that kind of support from Prosper Portland staff. That's what I would want.
Yeah, we can provide that.
I just want to support Hobin's recommendation. I think the more information that we have around those decisions helps future decisions, and that we'll have a bigger picture. So support that.
And one of the things I'd like to say is that I was one member representing this group out of maybe 20 people. And from my understanding, the decisions has already been kind of forwarded, but all the information that was given to me, I think that we could decipher and share that. I don't know if we have the opportunity to change any of that, so I just want to make sure that we understand that part.
Alicia?
I too support the recommendation or suggestion that you guys meet and present it back to us in a more digestible way.
Thank you, Tori, for the report. We appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
Our next item is room for public comment. At this moment, if you would like to express a thought or respond to something that has been identified on the agenda, you are more than invited to come to the table, identify your name, and then your item of concern, and we will hear your voice. So, anyone from the community, don't everybody run over each other at the same time. Okay, there is another moment and another opportunity to do so. If you will flip over your agenda item. Moving on to number 7, and right before we do number 7, we have a committee member.
I would like to, I had made 2 meetings at the same time, and this was the second one, and I would have to leave. I gave myself an hour and a half to be here. I'm 30 minutes late already, but I wanted to come and meet everybody and put a face with a name kind of thing, and I'll be back on the next meeting, but I have to go, sorry to say. And hopefully you don't have a vote, because you won't have a quorum if I leave.
We might vote about you. I'm just kidding.
You can.
Now that's power right there.
I wanted to, I just wanted to share my thoughts a little and meet everybody for the night, but I didn't want to cancel either one of you, but, so I split you in half.
And in the future, you could just tell the chair or co-chair at the beginning of the meeting that you have to leave early, and that's okay.
Oh, do that in advance? Okay, thank you.
Nice to meet you. Welcome to the committee.
Glad you're here. Well, number 7 is the first partner presentation. The committee has decided that they want to have a monthly partner presentation. And the first partner presentation is from the Northeast Housing Strategies Oversight Committee update and overview. We're going to ask Dr. Holt to come to the center table and present. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being here. I'm Dr. Holt, and I chair the Northeast Oversight Housing Committee. And here tonight is the staffer from the Portland Housing Bureau, and I'm going to ask her to come and join me. I know you hadn't planned on it, but you're here, so I'm going to have you come. I've switched gears to be the chair now, so. Chair's got a little bit of juice. Thank you very much. Does everybody have the report? And hopefully those of you who are here have a chance to see the report. I've got about 15 minutes, I understand. Madam Chairperson. You're going to keep me on track? Okay, because I thought I'd just read through it word by word, and we just examine all of the, no, you don't want to read through it. Couple of things I want to highlight in relationship to the work that we do as the Oversight Committee for the Northeast Housing Strategies. So So if you will turn your first page and look at page 3, it identifies the scope of the Oversight Committee, talks a little bit about the history of what brought us into being. And so this is our third report. It's our third annual report. And what you are seeing is what the city commissioners have looked at and what the mayor has looked at. And it reminds why we've come into place and what our specific charge is. And I think this is important for everybody to know. As you look at the scope of the Oversight Committee, our scope is to advise on and review program proposals and plan development, to monitor the implementation of policy and programming and associated outcomes, to advise the housing director or housing commissioner on progress issues, concerns associated with the North-Northeast neighborhood housing strategies as it relates to the monies that are spent within the urban renewal area. And then I think this is key, is that PHB, Portland Housing Bureau, will inform the Oversight Committee of decisions, plans, proposals prior to implementation. So our committee is not an advisory committee. We don't function from the standpoint of kind of a check off or rubber stamp. We function from the standpoint of making sure that things have been articulated around how these dollars are going to be spent, that is what happens. So accountability and responsibility, holding, as it were, the city's feet to the fire, as well as the nonprofit partners who participate or who benefit from the dollars that are allocated to do the work. So it's a little unique in that this committee is the first of its kind, not only in the city, but from what I understand, around the nation. So, not that we feel the weight of that at all. So if you will flip through, you kind of get a picture of the direction, the decisions, the allocation, the funding directives in terms of rental housing and home ownership opportunities, and how the dollars have been chosen or selected to be directed. I want to bring your attention then to page 15, our committee evaluation. And again, I will not read all of it. It's great reading. You should really spend time with it. It's amazing stuff. But under the committee evaluation this year, there were several areas of concern for the Oversight Committee. And we've been at this since officially 2015. Initially, it began in 2014. And so we were 6 months in with our first report, and not much activity transpired within the first 6 months. The following year really was kind of I'll say, everyone kind of getting up to speed and an opportunity to engage. But then last year we ran into what were some concerns, and we identified those specific concerns. Again, I won't read through them, as it relates to our concern around the responsiveness from Portland Housing Bureau and the responsiveness and or the effectiveness and or the strategies of some of the nonprofit partners. When this review was presented, it was then determined by the Portland Housing Bureau that they wanted to have an opportunity to respond to the concerns, and the mayor also tabled the report to the city council so that there could be opportunity for Portland Housing Bureau to respond. And I don't know if you should identify yourself, say who you are and what your role is, and so forth.
Leslie Goodlow, I'm the Business Operations Manager for the Portland Housing Bureau and the Project Manager for North-Northeast Housing Strategies, and I staff the Oversight Committee.
And she's a part of all the great conversations we get to have when we meet with the mayor and or I meet with the Housing Bureau Director around the process and or kind of report card of the work that is going on. So as indicated, the mayor decided, hey, we need to pause because there are some significant items that need to be addressed, which afforded us an opportunity to see how this Oversight Committee actually functions and operates. And there's some pretty big things that have come out of this, this moment of pause. One of those things, where is it? Is a change in the down payment assistance loan program. So I'll let you explain how the down payment assistance loan program historically has operated and something that has happened as a result of our concern about it.
So the current program is that you would select a house within URA, and we just recently increased the dollar amount, but you would get somewhere between $60,000 and $100,000 depending upon what you needed, and that would be a silent second on your house that you would not have any interest accruing, but then at 30 years, you would then have that amount due. So whatever amount you had, you would then have to either refinance that through the Housing Bureau or make a balloon payment of the $60,000, $80,000, $100,000, whatever it was that you received. If you pass away and your kids inherit your house, we would then negotiate with them about repaying the loan or deferring it until 30 years. And then at that point, they would either start making payments on it or have to pay it off. Or if you sell the house, you'd have to pay that significant amount of money back. The proposal on the table at this point that we're still working through the details would be that at 15 years, we would begin forgiving that down payment assistance, and by the time you get to 30 years, it would be totally forgiven. We've not worked out the mechanism for that, and as I found out today, it would be retroactive to all of our down payment assistance loans that we've given from the Housing Bureau that are beyond 15 years. We've had different loan products with the history of the program. When it was with PDC, before it came over to the Housing Bureau, they had different loan terms. So some were for 10 years, some were for 15 years. And we're gonna go back and analyze all of those, and anybody that is past or has made it to 30 years and they still have a balance, we would totally forgive that. So that still has to go through, go back to the Oversight Committee. It has to go to our Portland Housing Advisory Committee, and then City Council has to approve it. But we have put the foundation together to be able to do that, and that would be citywide, not just in Northeast Portland.
We're super excited about that, and I'll tell you why. Ultimately, from the Oversight Committee, one of the reasons why we exist is to assist the people who've been most marginalized and most impacted by repeated city action. So what's important in the work that we do is to keep the goal of the reason that we exist. And as we thought about this as one, and there are several others I could identify, but I use this one to illustrate a point. As we thought about, are we really helping the people ultimately if we're putting this weight on their heads at the end of a 30-year process? Income has changed, life has changed, who knows where you are, and now they've got this burden of $100,000 or $80,000 payback, and who knows what that interest rate will look like. So the committee's voice in a unified manner as it relates to, again, keeping in mind why we exist, weighed in on this concern, and I am super excited to hear about not only it affecting the people, specifically people of color who've been most impacted, but also people who benefited or needed to benefit from this programming. So some of the things that we can do, or what I think oversight committees have an opportunity to do, is to affect policy, affect systems, affect decision-making processes for the benefit of the community. So questions, thoughts?
Just a really quick question.
Yes,
as far as the quantity of dollars and the quantity of people that would be positively impacted by this, do you have those numbers, or can you share that with this body?
Well, currently we have $5 million set aside for home ownership. Some of that is actually going into development as opposed to down payment assistance. So I can't give you the exact number of how much of that 5 million is going to down payment, because it depends on the program and the people that are going through those programs. We did divide the funds up between the AW Collaborative, which is AW, Proud Ground, Hacienda, NEA, and Habitat for Humanity,
What does all mean?
African American Alliance for Home Ownership. And then PCRI got, I think,
Portland Community Reinvestment Initiative?
PCRI got 1.7 million, and the AW Collaborative got 3.3 million. And of that, those dollars, some of it is going to build new houses as opposed to going to down payment assistance. So if, so right now I can't give you the exact number of those because we don't know yet, because people are still going through the process of who's actually gonna buy a new house versus use down payment assistance to buy a house that's already available in the URA.
So have these dollars been deployed yet, or are they going to be deployed?
They are in process of, we have allocated the dollars, they've not all been spent because construction is starting on a variety of projects. We do have 5, 6 people that have used down payment assistance to purchase already available stock in the URA. So that's $600,000 that has been spent out of that 5 million.
There's also dollars that are already allocated, right? You can go to the deep down payment assistance altogether.
I'm sorry?
Push your button,
These are only the people or the areas that are part of the URA.
Right. The money that I'm talking about is only to be spent within the interstate URA. We have $20 million initially that the mayor provided, and then we got an additional 33 million out of the what was called the TIF lift when they reallocated funds. And we have what's called base tax increment financing that comes to the Housing Bureau. So right now, about 70% of the funds available in the interstate URA come to the Housing Bureau for housing-related items, so both rental development and home ownership. And so we have, I think, about 15 million left that is not allocated, that our oversight committee is going to help us decide how those funds get programmed and how much of it goes to home ownership, how much of it goes to home repair, and how much of it goes into additional rental development. We have, I think, 5 rental development projects that are in various stages of development. So a good portion of those dollars are going to build new rental units that will be affordable for 99 years.
All right.
Okay, Gwen, you had a question for me?
Sure. You mentioned at the start that there was some concerns with like the effectiveness and responsiveness of some of the nonprofit. Can you give us a little more information about those agencies?
Well, if you look at your, and I'll let you read through it at your leisure. So she referred to some of them. And so some of it was information was not coming quickly enough, or individuals weren't responsive enough. And so we identified that as halting the process. Again, all that we're doing is in relationship to the promises that were made becoming promises kept. So our goal is to make sure we keep our eye on the target, and that if there are any impediments to us getting there, that we identify that process. Now, we meet every other month, and then sometimes we meet on a monthly basis, depending on necessity, and try to give consistent opportunity for the partners, as well as Portland Housing Bureau, to report out in those monthly meetings. So that's how our monthly meetings are ran. The agenda consists of the partners and/or Portland Housing Bureau reporting out, keeping us updated, giving us accurate information, so that we're making sure that we're moving forward on a regular basis.
Got it. I had an additional question. I think I know the answer, but I'd like to hear it from you. You also said that you're unsure what the interest rate might look like on that balloon payment at some foreseen time in the future. I'm sure that there is a financial reason that's built in to how these loans are made, but it seems like there might be a possibility of creating a fix. So is there no opportunity for fixing an interest rate for?
Well, here's the exciting thing, is that loan's going away. So if people stay in their homes, it won't be an issue.
Okay.
So the exciting thing for us is that that's going to be a moot point.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're not adding an extra burden on people who've already been significantly impacted.
You said currently there's 6 that, people that funds have been deployed. Are you tracking the ethnicity on those people? And also, as far as the rental, you had mentioned these rental units, the forgiveness for whatever nonprofit is renting them out, and they're low income for 99 years. Are you also tracking the ethnicity on the rental units as well? Because we've been hearing in the news quite a bit on discrimination in rental units. So are you ensuring that those are being rented out to ethnic minorities?
Yes. So that's a great question. I don't know how many people have heard of the preference policy that Portland Housing Bureau developed in response to the forums that we had for the first $20 million. And all of the people that are either getting down payment assistance or getting the home ownership opportunities have to apply through the preference policy. And that means people that have had the most displacement, they have to have 6 points or have had their homes taken by eminent domain. They get first priority. And that is out of the study area, which we determined had the most significant displacement of particularly African Americans. The change in the demographics went from probably about 60% people of color living in the study area to less than 20 or 30% in some areas of town. And so people apply through the preference policy, and we found over the 2 rounds that we've done, over 85% of the folks that applied have been African American. Very few. And then we've had some Hispanic, some Asian, some Native American, but overwhelmingly most of the people that have applied because of the changing demographics or the change in the gentrification of Northeast Portland, that most of the people that have been displaced have been people of color. So they score the highest, and they will have first opportunity for both the rental units and the home ownership opportunities. And we are tracking. They have to apply through us. We send the list to the property managers, and we know who's being denied and why they've been denied, and then who's going to get into those units.
Well, it sounds like you guys are doing a great job, by the way, and just a slight suggestion also, and I don't know if it's like the auditor's office, but just to have a third party also kind of look at that to kind of validate everything would be a positive. I'm not denying anything that you're saying. I think it's great work, but,
We are that third party.
Okay.
We're the
fair
ones
enough.
watching.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, we're the ones making sure.
So when was your committee put in place?
We started in 2015.
So this is not, you said there's been 3 reports?
This is the third
Third, and this is for the whole year of
for
2017?
2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this is the one that the mayor has, so does the public have access to this?
They do. It is on the auditor's website.
It just hasn't been presented to the council?
It is, we go before city council on the 5th of April, I think now. It would have been the 31st of January.
Okay.
We were asked to postpone in order to offer the opportunity to respond to our concerns.
Okay. And in terms of creating the report, do you work with Prosper Portland staff to do this, or is it compiled by the committee themselves?
So I work with, and our committee works in a kind of collaborative effort to make sure that the items we're concerned about are being articulated among us. And then we work with Portland Housing Bureau staff to draft the actual document, but we write it. It is our document. It is not their document. They put together the necessary information, the graphs, the graphics, the layout, and the design, but it is all approved by.
The evaluation page on 15 was written by a committee member?
Absolutely.
Also, I wanted to know, how do you feel, either one of you can answer this question, our committees are either connected, how they would interact, how we can benefit one another in the decisions that we're making, how we take information that you're sharing with us tonight to help to inform decisions that we may be making in the future. That kind of speaks to the purpose of why we wanted to have partners coming in. So if you could share that with us so that we can carry that forward.
Great question, and my hope is, because what we're doing is so complementary, that it gives us an opportunity to think about how do we support each other's work? How do we make sure that you're informed of, you and I had a conversation before, specifically, I'll give an example of the Hill Block, that is one piece of property in the scope of multiple properties, in a larger scope of what's going on around affordable housing strategies. So that the policies, that the systems, that the processes that get put in place are not siloed, so that every group is doing their own thing, but that we interact, that we talk. I think having someone that represents your group coming and being a part of, being present at the Oversight Committee meetings and vice versa, helps us stay informed, helps us to stay collaborative with what we do and how we do it. How do we support one another?
And one of the most important pieces is that you all gave us $5 million. You gave Portland Housing Bureau $5 million to support folks at a higher MFI, AMI.
Area median income.
Thank you.
80% to 120.
To get both, to get home repair and to be able to purchase homes, and then the ADU program, which we have not started yet. And so that's one of the biggest places where we, both our Oversight Committee and you and PHB and Prosper Portland need to work together, is you all need to, know how those dollars are being spent, if we're being successful in getting them out the door, and then particularly with this ADU program that has not met with approval yet, with the mayor, with our new director, or with the Oversight Committee, is if we decide not to do it, how do you want to reprogram those dollars? Do you want to put them into home repair so that we can help more people stay in their homes? Do you want to put it towards home ownership to help more people buy homes? Or do you want to take the money back and put it someplace else? And so that's very key for us. One of the reasons why I attend all of these meetings is because we are connected through those dollars, and I have to make sure that the dollars are spent both the way our Oversight Committee wants to see them and the way that you all want to see them being spent.
I'm sorry if we'll have public comment, but if there's more questions, I want us to kind of use that time to get those answered before we dismiss. But maybe I can ask, does anyone have any public comments now? Then I'm going to suggest we continue on with this conversation for a little bit, about 7 more minutes.
Sorry. My question is still, and it's probably going to be always directed towards Prosper Portland, but there is monies, $5 million is not a lot of money that is going to be distributed. Is there any matching funds that goes with that?
$5 million for which program?
Is that the AMI, or is that, which program is that going to be?
So the initial $20 million was divided between home ownership, home repair, and rental development and land banking. Okay. So out of that $20 million, $5 million of it went to home ownership. Out of the subsequent increase that we got from the TIF lift, I think we put, I don't know, I'd have to look at the document, another $7 million went into home ownership, and let's see, about $5 million more went into, I'm sorry, I'm on page 7. About another $5 million went into home repair, and then we put $19 million into rental development. Okay. So of each kind of, each of our buckets, we divided money up into to support those particular programs. Plus, we also have what we call base that is not shown in this document because those funds come regardless of this, but they now fall under the purview of North-Northeast Housing Strategy. We use the strategy to implement all the dollars. So any money that we spend in interstate is now subject to the preference policy, regardless of its base, regardless if it's the 20 million, if it's the 32 million, if it's the remaining 15 million, or if by some wonder we were able to extend the district and get more money out of, then all of it, anything in interstate subject to the preference policy and the oversight committee.
Okay, so this is my question, and Kimberly knows this has been a question for mine for a long time. In 2003, there was certain areas that removed out of the ICURA that was just designated, they're gonna take certain boundaries and move them out completely. And my goal has been to remove that area back in that area, in there, because, I don't understand how they designated that. But it's a small area, and we want to know, is that area going to be moved back in the ICURA so that those people can have the same designated amount of monies? Or is that just going to be ignored and just going to keep continuing?
Okay, just want to go now.
I was just going to say, so that's a great question, and PHB is working with Prosper on looking at the houses that are within 500 feet of the boundary and those that are 1,000 feet, and what we can bring in. And so that's been a process we've been working on for, about 6 months? And we are trying to get a meeting scheduled to talk about what the next steps are for extending the boundary. So you're not the only homeowner that has asked that question. We have a list of people that are just outside, their neighbors in, but they're not. So we agree that we want to try to figure out how to select people, because we can't bring everybody in.
Right.
And so what's the best way to do that?
Okay,
And
thanks.
so, and let me add to that, thank you. Let me add to that, that one of the great things about anything being added into the ICURA, or the urban renewal boundary, it automatically gives an oversight committee and the work that we do. And so some accountability is associated with it that's already established, which I think helps to expedite, and helps to raise the effectiveness of whatever gets done, so.
Thank you.
How many households are you planning on impacting through this work, and how did you come up with that quantity?
When you say impacting, what do you mean? People losing homes or new homes coming in, or what do you mean?
The rental units, the new homes, their work to renovate homes, the adding in the ADUs, and so on. So those numbers, how did they derive from, and the dollars as well?
So in the report, we give the estimates on of how we thought we were going to spend those dollars based on what things cost in 2015 when we initially distributed the funds. So if you look at on page 5, and it says single-family home repair, we put $3.2 million, and we hope to serve 80 households with loans up to $40,000. Now, everybody that gets a loan doesn't necessarily need $40,000, so we may end up helping 90 households with that particular pot of money, or it wouldn't be any less than 80, but it could be more than 80 because everybody doesn't need that amount of money. And then you can see that we hope to help 160 households with grants. We've since then increased the potential grant amount up to $10,000 because we found that $5,000 really wasn't enough to really do much, particularly when folks needed roofs or they needed ADA, they needed ramps, they needed things to be able to keep them in their homes. So we've since increased the grant amount up to $10,000, which of course is then going to reduce the number of people that are eligible. So each of the buckets shows how many people we hope to help. The rental units is on page 9. shows the projects that are in development. The first two are home ownership projects, and they show, well, Proud Ground on 5020 North Interstate. We think we're probably going to get about 50 units on that project. And then you can see each project, how many units we're hoping to get. The only one that's changed since we wrote the report is the Reach Argyle project. Is probably going to be like 198 units as opposed to 215. And that's based on a cost per unit of the subsidy that we put in. So generally for rental units, it's about $100,000 subsidy from PHB. And then now for home ownership development, we will go up to $125,000 subsidy for the construction of new home ownership units.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Lisa? Madam Chair?
Yes, I have a question. Oh, so back to when you initially began, Dr. Holt, with your purpose. You talked about accountability and responsibility and not advisory. When you say not advisory, do you mean to council and not to staff?
So we exist not for any particular entity. So we don't exist for Portland Housing Bureau. We don't exist for the partners. We exist for the community that we represent.
Okay.
So our role is to, while we do give advice and we do weigh in, ultimately, as any group that exists in the city, unless you are elected, you cannot make determinations. We cannot say this is what will happen.
Right.
But what we can say is this is what should happen and this is why it should happen. And here's, based on the voice of the community and the work that's been done, what the community wants to happen. And so that's our role, and that's what I mean. So once any individual group, whomever, has made a determination with how dollars will be allocated, then our role is to make sure that's exactly what happens.
And if it's not fitting in with the purpose of the policy, then that's when you step in and say, I think that this is a recommendation that we're giving to you, advising to someone, whether that's.
And hopefully we do that not in an annual basis, hopefully because of how we meet frequently, we're actively engaged so that it's not an annual moment that you now have 6 points. The 6 points, actually it's 8, but the reason why they're in the report is because we tried to get some things resolved and we just could not seem to achieve that through the year. So that's how it ended up in the report.
And I just wanted to add to that, to the importance of what the Oversight Committee does, and I know you're running out of time. We had a situation a year ago where PHB made a recommendation to Commissioner Saltzman about a project, and the Oversight Committee did not agree. And so Dr. Holt met with Commissioner Saltzman and expressed, okay, well, you can do this, but let me tell you what the repercussions are going to be if you do it that way. And then Commissioner Saltzman ended up changing the decision into the other direction because the Oversight Committee had enough weight behind them to convince the commissioner that that was a bad decision.
All right. One last quick question for you, Leslie.
Yes, ma'am.
Just clarification for me. The preference policy is not just about rental housing or home ownership. You also have to qualify for home repair.
No.
Okay, so it is just for.
Right now, we are only using it for rental and for home ownership.
Okay.
There's not been a decision to use it for the ADU program. I think that'd be tough for us to do that. And for home repair, it's whoever applies, and we have money. So if you know people that live in the URA that need home repair, I should have brought some flyers, but we do have funds available for both loans and grants.
And we want to get it out the door.
All right.
Yes.
I have a question about the grants, and it's not for me. I know someone who's a homeowner, long time in this area, and can you tell me more about the grants available for home repairs? What's the amount of that?
I'm not the expert, but they can be anywhere, I think they can go up to $10,000. We have community partners that manage those, and I can give you my number or my email. You can call and I will get you all the information because I don't have it committed to memory.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for coming and speaking with us tonight.
Thank you very much.
welcome.
Our privilege. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for putting me on the spot at the last minute.
When we have speakers on our email, follow-up email after the meeting, can we make sure that we send the contact information so that everybody has the email addresses if they want to follow up with questions and stuff? Thank you.
Well, we appreciate the report from the Northeast Oversight Committee. Appreciate that tonight. And the fact that no one had comments, I think we've come to the end of our time, Madam Chair and Co-Chair. So, well, there was an opportunity. Did you have? Well, absolutely. Come on. We've got approximately, well, good to see you, sir. If you would state your name, and we're going to give you 3 minutes starting now.
I gotta figure which one I want to ask about. My name is Richard Brown. I'm a homeowner and community member. One of the concerns that was voiced earlier was about outreach to the community. I would like to suggest that maybe if you summarize your meetings, these board meetings or larger meetings, and send that to the local newspaper, Observer and the Scanner, they may put it in there. They may ask you to pay for some advertisement, but they may put it in there because you're giving out information to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Great recommendation.
Appreciate your time. Thank you, committee members, for your time. I believe we've come to the end of our meeting.
Yeah,
Madam Chair.
I just want to ask everybody, I think for this meeting, to leave your red and green papers here, and then we'll have them for you at the next meeting. Don't take them home for this meeting. Thank you. Thank you for attending. Good night.
Thank you. Looks like there's food left. Make sure you grab some to go.